Welcome to the Successful Nonprofits Podcast. I'm your host, Dolph Goldenberg. Some people are worth the wait, and we have been working to get today's guest on the podcast for months. And from everything I've seen, from every indicator, he is worth the wait. Wayne Sleight and I started exploring this conversation and recording it about 5 or 6 months ago. We really wanted to record a conversation about building a strong organizational culture. But we both seem to have incredibly hectic schedules that just did not line up for actually recording the episode. So I am so thrilled that our schedules aligned and we're going to be able to do it today. Wayne knows a ton about building strong organizational culture. He is the Chief Operating Officer of the digital marketing agency 97th Floor, which is just outside of Salt Lake City. And his efforts at building a corporate culture, have received broad recognition. His company has made lists like Fortune's 50 Best Small Workplaces, Entrepreneur Magazine's list of top company cultures, and also the Marketing Agency of the Year award. Now, I know that oftentimes when we talk with for-profit companies, it may not feel like they speak as much to the nonprofit sector. But I would encourage listeners, as Wayne and I talk about things that his company does to build a strong company culture, to think really about how this might apply to them. 97th Floor doesn't have hundreds or thousands of team members like most medium-sized and smaller nonprofits. It's not actually that large of an organization, but they've built an amazing corporate culture. And of course, we also may end up chatting just a little bit about digital marketing and how your nonprofit can market itself better. I'd be shocked if that did not come up at some point in our conversation. So let's welcome Wayne Sleight to the podcast. Hey, Wayne, welcome.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks so much, Dolph.
So you clearly think a lot about organizational culture, but what sparked your passion for it?
It's hard to even classify it as a passion, but I absolutely do enjoy thinking a lot about it. What sparked it was past experiences of working at different companies. Some things I liked and a lot of things I didn't like. When I joined 97th Floor, Chris Bennett is my partner. He's the CEO. When I joined, it was just him. So it was just the two of us. So it wasn't a company. It was us working. We didn't have an office. It was working from our home. And there were no rules. We've known each other most of our lives. So we're very, very close. And it was all about the work. That's all that mattered. Nothing else. And as it was in 2012, we got our first office. We had just hired a few other team members and we moved in. All of a sudden we started putting in rules, and there was no thought to it other than, those last 3 jobs that you had, what were the rules? What were the policies? And we'd mark those down and write them all out. And that was it. But then I didn't ever want to hold myself to a different standard than our other team members. So if they had to follow these policies and these rules and basically this culture, I had to as well. So I started following that to myself, and I'm like, man, this kind of sucks. Like, work is starting to suck. Because it wasn't about the work. It started becoming different things like that. So me and Chris started having conversations, and he would tell me, everything worked before with me and you. Like, why can't you just go back to it? And I was like, well, if that way of doing work for me makes me happier and allows me to do better work, why isn't that for the rest of the team members? So we started asking the question why, which is something I think everyone should do in all aspects of their lives. But we started doing it in relation to this conversation with work. And we just started asking, why do we care that people are here at 8 o'clock in the morning, exactly at 8 o'clock? Why do we care that they have to, take X amount of days for sick, X amount of days for vacation? And we couldn't find any good answers other than that's what other companies did in the past that we worked for. So we started writing our own rules of what we wanted. And essentially the rules were what would make Wayne and Chris, what would make Chris love working at a company, at this company? And those were our roles. And that was kind of the hypothesis was just like, well, let's build a company culture that we like. And it might not be for everyone, but it will be for people that are similar to us in terms of what they value. And to this day, we still say 97th Floor is not a company for every single person. It works for, I think, a lot of people, but some people it doesn't work. And we try to be very upfront and honest about that in just our overall marketing, like on our website, but also like in interviews. We tell them exactly how it is because we don't want someone coming in and being disappointed. An example of that is some people, and totally fine, they kind of want stuff handed on a silver platter to them. Do X, Y, Z. You come in and you do X, Y, Z, and then you're done and you go home. We don't really operate that way, which I can see that as being a con in many cases. Sometimes people would feel like they don't have as much guidance as they want. And we think we do provide guidance, but a lot of it is they have to kind of ask the question first. We more set kind of the overall goal and let them kind of, find the answer, solve the problem by themselves. Anyway, that's kind of back to the question. That's kind of where it started, was just the early days of us forming 97th Floor, the actual company, like our first office and coworkers and stuff, and realizing the traditional way of doing it wasn't for us. So we figured, well, it's probably not for other people too. And so far, it's 2019, 7 years since we moved in that first office. The people that have come through the doors, 99.9% have absolutely loved it. People that have moved on to other companies, we still stay in contact. That's another part of our culture is we have an alumni network. We do alumni events and stuff. And, everyone seems to have really liked the culture that we have, and it's made a positive impact in their careers.
So that's really super cool, Wayne. And I love the fact that you were completely upfront and honest. You put it on your website. You talk to candidates and you're like, we're not a good fit for everybody. What are some of those rules for Chris that means Chris is going to have a job that doesn't suck, and are rules across the board?
Yeah. I mean, one is that we're a results only work environment, a ROW. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. That's not something that we coined. It's started by two women at Best Buy a long time ago, and they have their own consultant agency that helped us be certified. But essentially what it means is every team member, every employee has 100% autonomy, and in turn, they give the company 100% accountability. So essentially, you're free to do whatever you want, whenever you want it, and wherever you want it, as long as the work gets done. So there's it takes out all of the subjectivity between, a manager and an employee. There's no longer, just keep it simple, no subjectivity. It's all about, objective discussions that are going on at that point. So that's one that, that applies to Chris, the CEO, myself, and every other employee.
So let me jump in. When you say 100% autonomy, does that mean as much vacation time, as much sick leave, come in when you want, leave when you want? You just have to hit your objectives?
Correct. Yeah. And it's different. A lot of people, when we talk about this, whether they're new or just new team members or just, out in the community, they think it's similar to flex time or unlimited vacation. And it's not. The difference, there's no vacation policy. Meaning when you have an unlimited vacation, you still have to request it, get it approved. People know. Where there's no policy at all. We don't talk about vacation. I mean, outside of, we're friends with the people we work with. So there's stuff like that. There's no scheduling of anything. And yeah, we have no way to track how many days people took off. It's all about setting, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly goals, and allowing people to achieve that. And we kind of get out of the way after that.
And so obviously these are really quantifiable and easily measurable goals.
Yeah. I mean, there becomes some gray areas sometimes where it's a little bit, I guess, for example, we have a small marketing department at 97th Floor for our own brand. And most of their goals are very metric based. but there's some that are a little bit more of like branding. And I get there's some, metrics that you can put on those, but we don't really do that with our overall branding. So it's more of just like a feel of what we want that department achieving. And that's a little bit more difficult, but I think that those are just conversations that you can have like in one-on-ones and kind of get a sense. And at those times, though, you can also look at productivity too of, okay, well, we don't have a specific metric to judge you on. So whether you were out all month or whatever on vacation and you weren't getting your work done, we can still look at like productivity things. So whether you wrote this many articles or whatever the case may be. But yeah, we just don't want to get involved in people's lives. We don't. I think traditionally companies, and I get if you look in like the history of work, I guess it's all about the employer controlling the life of the employee, and we don't want that. My father passed away when I was a teenager, and one of the things that he told me, not right before he passed away, but like one of the only like life advices that I received from him because I was young when he passed away was be your own boss. And growing up, I always thought that meant, oh, you got to be the boss that makes a lot of money or whatever the case may be, from TV shows and whatever the case may be. But as I started maturing, because he didn't have a lot of money, I started realizing it wasn't about the money. It was about the control. Being able to go to your son's basketball game whenever you want, be able to be like in control of your life and not being held at the mercy of your employer. So that's kind of what we've adopted at 90 Cent Floors. We want to get out of the controlling of our employee, our team members' lives. We want to just say it's a little bit more of a freelance economy. Even though they're not freelancers, they're employees and they get, the benefits that come with being an employee, guaranteed salary and benefits and protections and all that kind of stuff. They do have the freelancer side in terms of like kind of being their own boss in the sense of controlling their own life, whether that's time, whether that's, you can tie it back to money in the sense if someone doesn't want to work as many hours, maybe wants to work 30 hours a week and they can get the job done. We don't track, so we don't know, but we'd be totally fine with that. But hey, if they want to make more money, they could, and they're only spending 30 hours and they want to spend 40, 50 hours a week, like that's in their control. They can ask for more responsibilities, which would, obviously come with higher pay. So that's kind of in a nutshell, one of the approaches that we try to take is get out of people's lives, almost treat them as a freelancer, but with the benefits of them being employed, right. Let them control their lives.
Very cool. So do you have any other rules besides just the meet your objective rule?
In terms of the work or like at the office?
So you've got these folks who, kind of are like contract workers, but they are employees, so they're W-2 employees.
Right.
Do you have any other rules for your employees other than just meet your objectives?
Yeah, I mean, there's rules in terms of, around the office, like don't leave your smelly, egg salad in the refrigerator for a week. There's certain things like that. Communication is a big one. I hate the word rules. It's more of a culture that we're doing, right? So like if you're taking time, everyone's expected to respond to everyone within 24 business hours, if not sooner. Most of the time, we still have quite a bit of people in the office. But we just look at the office as more of a tool that they can go use, not as much as like a mandatory thing. But we have Slack, we have Zoom, we have a lot of technology that allows people to meet face-to-face anytime. We have Zoom rooms, and all that kind of stuff. So they're expected to respond at least within 24 hours to clients, to coworkers, whatever the case may be. If not, they're supposed to use, in Row, you call them superpowers, which is essentially just like a email vacation responder, or in Slack, a status notification explaining, I will not be responding to you or responding until, Thursday, October, 30th or whatever the case may be. So people know when to expect a response. So yeah, there's, I wouldn't say so much rules, more guidelines of just how we operate. And I think people come in and like new employees, and you kind of just pick that culture up. I mean, that's kind of what culture is, right? Like you don't have to necessarily be told. You just witness it and you experience it, and hopefully adopt that culture.
I think that's an excellent point that, it's really about culture and not about rules. So what are some of the other ways that your organization's culture are distinct from that of a more traditional employer?
Yeah, I think that focus on results and nothing else is probably the biggest one people talk about. The other one is just our mission as a company, I think, is different than a lot of companies. There's several out there that are very similar to us, or at least in their own way. We don't have aspirations to go public or sell for $100 million or grow at crazy rates or whatever the case may be. Like, we're all about doing work we love, which is marketing. Like we're marketing geeks. So it's all about, like, at our company meetings, we do talk about numbers. Like, we show numbers just because, it's interesting, but we don't have goals for numbers in terms of revenue or anything like that, like money numbers. We have goals for, retention rates or client health in terms of meeting the metrics for our clients and that kind of stuff. But we don't have a big focus on money. Not that it doesn't matter. It absolutely matters, but it's a byproduct of what we actually care about, but it also is a means to an end of what we care about. So most companies have a mission statement, right? Or vision or whatever. And then they have values. We have both of those. But we also have another thing that I haven't heard of any other company having. I'm sure there are in different ways. We have guideposts. And these guideposts, there's 5 of them. It's the 5 guideposts that we have every business decision be filtered through. So think of your company values that you have, whatever it is. You typically use your company values to determine who you're going to hire, who you're going to promote, and who you're going to fire too, right? So honesty is one of your company's values. You look for that when you're interviewing an employee. You look for it in terms of who you're giving praise to or promoting. And if someone's not honest, you terminate them, you let them go based on that. So how you filter personnel decisions through your values, we use these guideposts to filter business decisions. And money or revenue is not one of those. For us, it's clients, which means, doing great work for the companies that hire us, but also the individual points of contact that we have. We want to help them get raises or promotions, make them look like, the stars that they are. Careers, which is our internal career from CEO to intern, making sure that whether it's at 97th floor that they're retiring here or they're going to start their own other company or go work in-house at some brand, whatever the case may be, that 97th floor is doing everything it can to make their career, whatever their objective is, help them achieve it. Charity is one, which will play right into this podcast, obviously. We care deeply about that. So we're members of the Pledge 1%, which you're probably familiar with. So we donate 1% of our gross revenue to charities each year, as well as doing volunteer work. Anyway, so that's one. And then leadership in the business community and specifically in our marketing industry. And then legacy meaning we want 97th floor to be around, we always say, where our grandkids can, apply to get a job at 97th floor, just because that matters to us, that we think it's cool to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. So as you can see in all 5 of those, not one of those is revenue based or anything like that. So any business decision that comes through that we're trying to make a decision on, obviously it at least has to help one of those things, but it cannot negatively impact any of those. So I guess an example would be if we took some of that money that we have budgeted out for charity and we gave it to our marketing department, we'd be able to grow or whatever. We wouldn't do that because, yes, that would help us with careers because we might be able to hire more. We get more clients and we can help them out, but we won't do that because that hurts our charity. And that's one of the reasons why we wake up in the morning is charity. So yeah, I think those guideposts is something that we really like, and we find is a little unique and different. But again, it's not for everyone. I think some people, they want to be part of those, rocket ship companies that, are hell bent on growing as fast or making as much money as possible. And again, we're not opposed to that, but it's not a focus of ours. Those 5 guideposts are why we're here.
And at what point in the recruitment process or onboarding process are you talking to your employees about those 5 guideposts?
So I'm not too involved anymore on like the early conversations. I would hope fairly early, but I mean, we have it on our walls and stuff. So hopefully, even though I kind of make fun of that usually of having values on your walls, was it this year? Yeah, beginning of this year, we finally got them on our walls just for a reason. I'm not a fan of it, just like most people, just because it's like, oh, you just slap it up there and then you're done. You check the box and you're done living those values or whatever the case may be. Anyway, we do have them on the walls. I'd expect the people that are doing are hiring, like our initial interviews and stuff, they're doing that very early on.
Now, have you had the rare occasion when you've got a team member that's not living those guideposts, or maybe being counterproductive in terms of amount of time they're taking off or something like that?
Yeah. So again, those guideposts are for business decisions, but then we have our 7 core values that we have. And yeah, absolutely. We've had people, it's not very common at all. But yeah, I mean, what's the point of putting values on the wall or even defining those if you're not actually living by those? And that's the hardest one. In terms hiring and promoting or giving praise based on those values, that's kind of the easy thing. And I think most companies get it right. The hard part is disciplining people based off of those values. It's very hard. And not to be a hypocrite, because we struggle. I personally struggle at that. But I guess the first step to recovery is acknowledging that you're not good at it. And I acknowledge it, and I'm trying to get better, and I've made steps. But yeah, when someone's doing good work in whatever role they have, but they're not. So one of ours is selflessness, right? So helping other people, whatever good work you're doing, sharing it with other people at the organization. If someone's just, does great work for 97th floor, but just keeps it all to themselves, it's never helping out. Or if someone's asking for help, it's never volunteering to kind of go help that person out. It's kind of hard to, discipline them. And we're not, a crazy, brutal company where it's like, someone doesn't help someone out one time and they're fired, but it's having that conversation with them. It's still uncomfortable to do, but we're trying to get better at that. And that's one of our, goals in terms of actually living, actually doing what we say instead of just, saying it.
And who typically has those conversations? I mean, do people's peers take them aside and say, hey, we have this value of selflessness and we need you to do this? Is it their supervisor? Is it kind of, various people depending on the situation? Who initiates them?
Yeah, the best case, and this does happen, is when each employee, each team member is policing themselves, right? That does happen, and it's great, and we want to keep going towards that because that's the best culture. That's where we want our culture to go. But it's difficult. So when that doesn't happen, yeah, it's whatever manager we have there. So we haven't, again, that's like our weak area in terms of the praise. One thing that we do at 97th floor sounds super silly. I get it. It's going to sound fluffy, but it does matter. Is every Monday we have a thing called Monday Cheers. So just on Slack, 2 people, the person that received a cheers the previous week gets to do it this week. So if I received it last week, on Monday in Slack to the whole company, I say, hey, I want to recognize Joe. I'm giving him a Monday cheers, and it's based on one of the company values. So you say, hey, Joe represents the company value selflessness. Amazing. This is what he did last week for me. And you explain it, right? And then they get a free lunch, a gift card to a local restaurant or whatever. And then it just gets passed on. Super simple. I get fluffy, but peer-to-peer recognition, it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
It feels really good. It's instead of always just like, oh, my manager gives me praise, but someone in sales gives me a praise. I don't even know, like they're not even on my team. Like that feels really, really good. But the cool thing about it is new employees or existing employees, but specifically new employees, they can come in and just every Monday they see 2 messages of people getting shout outs and they understand why. So they can start understanding what it takes to be successful at this company. Oh, this person got a shout out for volunteering and helping the sales team on a project, even though they're on client fulfillment or whatever. Like, okay, I need to start looking for opportunities to help other teams, and then I'll get shout outs and I'll get I'll get a free lunch or a raise or a promotion, whatever the case may be. So I think it's a simple theme, but over time it builds up, and I think people are able to understand, what it takes to be successful if that's what they want to be.
That's very cool. Now, how did that get started? Like, did you all see the idea somewhere else? Did the team internally have this idea? Who came up with the Monday Cheer idea?
Yeah. So it started, we used to use a service called Tiny Pulse, if anyone's familiar. We don't use it anymore. It's a great service if anyone wants to check it out. No, not affiliated at all. It's basically just a employee survey thing. And one of the aspects of it at the time was you could do cheers. You could shout people out. And people really liked it. The reason we stopped doing it, to go off on a tangent, is it seemed like at least how we were using it, I think was a little bit wrong, where it was asking every single week, like, what's wrong here? What's wrong here? And it felt like after a while, it was like, well, nothing's wrong here, but I keep getting asked it. So let me think. And it was like, you're trying to search for some negativity. So we took that out. And we still do employee surveys in other ways. But one of the things when we took it away is people started missing was those cheers. And I think they called them cheers, actually. I think that's the name. That's how we adopted the name. Anyway, so after a few months, I can't remember who or how many employees, team members, asked that they missed it. And I can't remember exactly how the Monday and 2 started, but it was a few team members just bringing up saying they missed it, that peer-to-peer recognition. So we brought it back in our own way.
You mentioned that you're still doing surveys. Are you using Culture Amp or something like that, or are you just using a Google form, or how are you doing your surveys?
Yeah, Google form, which I get isn't some people like frown upon that, but I'm personally not a huge fan of surveys in general. I like more just during one-on-one having discussions. But some people in our leadership disagree with me, which is totally fine. And so we kind of, I guess, do a mixture of that every once in a while, like a very formal survey. But even all those surveys are followed up with one-on-ones where they're able to have discussions. So one of the benefits of doing the survey, which I agree with, is we're able to aggregate, a lot of, instead of just having one-on-one conversations and then at the end of the meeting with every person in the company, kind of going off of just feelings of what's going on, we can aggregate the data. Mm-hmm. So that's why we do both.
Nice. A lot of what I love is, you suggested a lot of things that either don't cost money or don't cost a lot of money. So doing check-ins, whether you're doing those one-on-one or whether you're doing surveys, or, your Monday cheer. I mean, maybe there's a gift card involved, maybe there's not, but your Monday cheer does not really cost that much, even if a lunch gift card is involved, or having those guiding principles or those values. And I love that, because I think a lot of nonprofits often think, well, we'd like a stronger organizational culture, but we're just so limited on dollars. We can't afford fancy things like culture amps and, expensive staff retreats. And, you've not said anything that's terribly expensive.
We are very much, I guess, not necessarily against spending money. I think that's just kind of who we are, just because we started, we're a bootstrapped company, right? Like, that's kind of in our DNA of being cheap. Me and Chris both grew up fairly on the very, very low end of middle class. So I think that's just kind of our DNA. So we don't spend a ton of money on that kind of stuff, but we do spend a little bit. But one of the themes of culture that we've been passionate about for a long time, and there's kind of a joke at our company, and anyone that knows me externally, is that I hate ping pong. And I'll explain why. I actually love ping pong. Not that I play it a lot, but I do love ping pong. But the last company I worked at before 97th Floor, they had a ping pong table. And this was when like culture started becoming fairly popular in kind of the business community, like focusing on it. 2009, 10, that area. They had a ping pong table, right? And everyone loved it. It seemed like I think 2 times a day, each team got to go play for like 10 or 15 minutes or whatever. And it seemed like that was what people were waking up to do, like just go have fun. And that was the culture. And I think a lot of companies, less so today, but for a while there, it seemed like all companies thought culture was all about the free snacks and the, yoga or whatever the case is, ping pong tables. So why I always say at 97th Floor we'll never have a ping pong table is just because of what that represents. Not that I have anything against. And we have silly, fun themes, but that's not the focus. We don't want people at 97th Floor because of those fun themes. So I think a nonprofit that maybe doesn't have a lot of money to spend on, the office or culture, that's totally fine. You don't need that. And I think if anything, that kind of stuff can attract the wrong people that are there for the wrong reasons. And I think a lot of companies got into doing that because the work that they were doing, it wasn't fulfilling to the employees. So I think there was kind of like this hole in each employee's heart that wasn't being filled because they weren't doing satisfying, fulfilling work. They weren't progressing. They weren't being challenged in their work. So the company felt, well, how do we fill that hole in our employees' heart? With ping pong, with free snacks, or whatever that fun stuff is. And that's the stuff that costs money typically. So yeah, we take the approach, if we're going to do fun stuff, it's more of kind of just like a byproduct. We had a good month or whatever. We'll go to a Utah Jazz game as a company in Sweden, like something like that. But it's not something in our employee ads or job ads or whatever, like, hey, come work at us and we get to go to Jazz games or anything like that. It's come work with us and do meaningful work, grow in your career, be challenged. Like it's that kind of stuff. So yeah, in terms of building culture, I would recommend staying away from that stuff, especially early on. And if you do it, kind of be hush hush about it and explain like this is not to make you stay here longer or attract new employees. This is just for us to kind of have a little bit of fun separate from like the core business. I recommend just focusing in on what people really care about. And I think that most people care about it. That I've written a few things and spoken at a few conferences in terms of millennials versus, Gen X and whatnot. And really, if you look at like studies and data, there is very little differences. There's some differences in terms of the generations outside of work, but in terms of when it relates to work, the themes that they care about is the exact same for the most part as Gen Xers. And I think a lot of companies thought like millennials for some reason just wanted a bunch of fun. And that's how it became a trend to just outspend, you hear Google doing some cool stuff and okay, well now we need to do that kind of stuff. And it went out the window. So yeah, I think we have great benefits that matters. That, that's not fun stuff. That's just a good 401k or good health insurance. But then we have other perks, definitely. And those, some cost money, but we try to take the approach that a perk is supposed to support the company values, or else don't do that perk. So an example of one of our perks at 97th Floor, small, is it's called the 97th Floor Library, which is any employee and any team member can request any book that they want, and the company will buy it. No questions asked. They take it home, read it, and when they're done, they just go put it on a bookshelf in our break room. So we have built up a collection, and then other people can just, there's no checkout process or anything like that. You just go grab a book whenever you want it and return it when you can. Simple thing, but when you hear of a new book, $20 or whatever, like it's coming out of your own pocket, you might think like, maybe I'll buy it. Let me think for a day or two, right? And then you never get around to it. Whereas if it's not your own money and it's 97th Floor's money, you just, I'll buy the book. And then boom, 2 days later from Amazon, it's on your nightstand. Well, now you're probably going to grab it. And the reason what that is benefiting is one of our values is Kaizen, which is a Japanese word for continuous improvement in business, right? Also yourself. So we want to encourage that. And, reading books is one of those approaches of continued education, continued improving on yourself, and whether it's marketing, business, self-help, or just your mind in general. So that's one of our perks that is not, it's actually not that expensive, but I don't know how many books we buy. We buy several books, or a few books every single month, $100 or something like that. But I think it sends that message of, hey, we value Kaizen. We value you not coming, you graduate, you have your job now and you're done learning. Like, no. We want you to constantly improving yourself.
That's awesome. I'm just about to ask you the off the map question, but before I do, I have to ask you now that I know you've got this library, is there a book by Ricardo Semler in the 97th floor library?
Not that I know of.
I just had to ask, are you familiar with the work of Ricardo Semler?
No.
Oh my God, I'm going to send you this book. So he's a Brazilian billionaire. He started a company. That's not true. He inherited a company that was worth about 25 or 30 million. He built it into $1 billion company where there's no vacation time policy. There is, there's no
Is he from Brazil?
Yep.
I've watched his TED Talk.
I believe that's how I was first introduced to him. I saw his TED Talk and I'm like, I got to read this guy's book. And so I went online and bought his book. But I'm going to have to send the book to you because it's a phenomenally good book. And it's a lot of the same types of things that you kind of describe where, he's like, I don't care when you work, where you work, as long as the work gets done. I don't, so he's like, if the most important place for you to be on Wednesday is at the beach with your child, then that's the most important place for you to be.
Yes. I didn't know he had a book. I'm definitely going to read that, I promise. I loved his TED Talk, and that definitely influenced us a lot. A couple other books that were core to influencing 97th Floor was Dan Pink's Drive. He also has a TED Talk that's about what motivates people. And then Sean Akers' Happiness Advantage. I think he also has a TED Talk as well. Everyone has a TED Talk. Anyway, those two books, Drive, Dan Pink, and The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker, are like two books that greatly influenced us.
That's awesome. I will make sure I check out both of those, and we will link all three books and all three TED Talks in the show notes so that people can, if they don't want to read, but they want to watch a 18-minute TED Talk, they can do that instead. Get the highlights. What I love about TED Talks is it's kind of like seeing the preview of a movie. You get the entire emotional roller coaster of the movie in 90 seconds. TED Talks are kind of that way, but in 18 minutes.
New employees, we have them watch the TED Talks in like their first week, but then we say, hey, the book's in the 97th Floor library. We're not going to force you to read it, but we strongly encourage it. But at least they got the 18-minute TED Talk.
That's awesome. I love it. So I've got an off-the-map question for you, and it's not the one that I thought I was going to ask you, which, when we were first talking, I was like, sometimes the muse tells me to ask something else. And the muse is telling me that I should ask you if you have a really good story about Japan.
Do I have a good story about Japan? Oh, man. It's one of the two places that are like that I mostly want to go visit. I have a sister-in-law from Osaka, Japan. So I've known her my whole life, my oldest brother. So I've just been fascinated by the Japanese culture just because of her, cooking me meals and stuff from when I was a young age. But I've never, unfortunately, been there. My niece and nephew go back quite a bit, and I need to go there. So I don't have any stories there. I have a friend. He actually, his company worked from 97th Floor's office. We have a few extra seats, and they're a startup, and so we try to help startups out by giving them free office space every once in a while. And it's called Onsen Towels, and it's the best towel you've ever had in your life. I don't have any ownership in Onsen or anything like that, so I'm not being biased here, but that's all we use at 97th Floor. But it comes. It's a towel from Japan that they use over there. It's very humid in Japan, is what I've been told by him, Shane. And it's a waffle type of a weave, so it actually dries you, as opposed to our American towels that are very fluffy and kind of just don't absorb as much, but they're very soft and comfortable in that sense. But they don't actually do what a towel is supposed to do. But then how thin it is, it dries really, really fast. So in humid places, in Utah, it's not so humid. It's pretty dry, actually. But in humid places, Florida or whatever, Atlanta, isn't Atlanta fairly humid? it's a great place. It dries so you don't get the bacteria or the grungy smell as quickly. So anyway, and there's a Japanese flag on each towel because it's inspired by Japanese. But yeah, it's doing good. He raised $1 million in his Kickstart campaign in like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. So
wow,
really happy for them.
That's really impressive. So first of all, I love that I genuinely appreciate your sense of ethics where you talk about something and then you'll say, well, I don't get anything out of it. And I genuinely appreciate that because, we live in a world where we're never really sure. So thank you. We will also, by the way, link to that towel in the show notes because I'm going to have to, and I'm really picky about towels. I'm going to have to go get one and we're going to link to the towel in the show notes if it's already available. But the reason I asked you that question was you mentioned Kaizen and then I was not certain, but I thought the artwork to your back right, because we're seeing each other on video. I thought the artwork to your back right might be Japanese or Asian, but apparently not. Yeah.
Up there?
Yeah.
Those are actually the night sky. So it's for my wedding and my first 2 kids. What the sky looked like, the positioning of the stars. I can't remember the company name. I think Night Sky or something. Again, not affiliated with them, but it was a present to my wife a birthday or 2 ago, or Christmas or something like that. But yeah, it's whatever the date was, you choose whatever date it is, and it shows you how the sky looks during that night. So yeah.
So I have to say that is perhaps I perhaps asked the best off the map question ever because that's beautiful. So you have the night sky from your wedding and from your child's birth. Wow.
Yep, we just had one, our 3rd kid 6 weeks ago, so I need to order a new one to go up there on the wall.
Well, at 6 weeks, they're not feeling left out yet. At 6 years,
True.
They're going to feel left out. How come my night sky's not up there, Daddy? That's awesome. Yeah. Wow. Well, Wayne, thank you so much. I am just super glad that you came on the podcast today. I've learned a lot. I know our listeners have learned a lot as well. I want to make sure that our listeners, or our listeners, either way, I want to make sure that our listeners know how to get a hold of you. Your URL is 97thfloor.com. And dear listeners, when you go there, be sure to check out their blog and check out one specific post. And that post is Culture Shock, how company culture is the primary force in determining brand strength. Hey, Wayne, thank you again. I'm super grateful.
Thank you, Dolph. It was great here. And if anyone, we do volunteer work and stuff. If anyone has any questions about marketing or whatever, we won't say, but we'll try to, help you out where we can. So anyone can reach out to me or just 97th Floor in general, and we'll volunteer our time a little bit to try to help answer any questions.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Don't forget that we'll have the URL for 97th Floor on the show notes at successfulnonprofits.com. Now, it is hard to believe that we will start a new year and a new decade. Let me just say that again. A new year and a new decade in less than a month. Of course, the new year also means it's time for our annual New Year's episode, and this year we want to include you in that episode. We have traditionally asked prior guests from the year to share their New Year's resolutions on that episode, and we're going to do that again this year, but we are supersizing it because we are also going to be including the resolutions of listeners like you. So, knowing that nonprofit professionals and board members are rarely idle and always seeking improvement, I am sure that you are thinking of some goals and resolutions for your new year. If that sounds like you, I would love to hear those resolutions. So, here's what I'm going to ask that you do. Grab your phone and start recording. I do, however, have a few guidelines. The first is please save your file as a WAV or MP3. It's super easy to do, whether using a Droid or an iPhone, it's super easy to do. The second is please make sure that your resolutions are personal. So that might be about your work life, it might be your board involvement, or it might be completely personal, like I want to get more sleep. But we are asking that folks kind of be light on self-promotion and heavy on an actual New Year's resolution they're really making. So let me also say that every year we get a couple recordings from executive directors or consultants who will say something like, my resolution is for my organization to change people's lives next year. And while that might be the resolution for their organization, it's probably not their own personal resolution. So the last thing that I'm going to ask is please send those to our special projects coordinator, Isaac, and that's Isaac at successfulnonprofits.com. And you guessed it, we will include Isaac's email address in the show notes. Now, that's our show for this week, listeners. I hope you've gained some insight to help your nonprofit thrive in a competitive environment.
I am not an accountant or attorney, and neither I nor the Goldberg Group provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. This material has been provided for informational purposes only, is not intended to provide, and should not be relied on for tax, legal, or accounting advice. Always consult a qualified, licensed professional about such matters.